I'm on the street. Okay, so welcome to the final session for today and for the week. Again, big thank you to Matthew for joining us here. And so I'm kind of bridging off some of the stuff that Matthew examined yesterday, especially with the tight game loops and all of those systems and how those can be used to then extract money and the whole systems around that. So I think we both kind of have that history of seeing this sort of stuff inside of games. So this is all about free to play financing and falsehoods. Uh, just to remind everybody, we're here in Kamloops in the beautiful area Kamloops inside of the lands of the Secwepemc peoples. And again, nice place to come for a visit if it's not too hot. We're right now, what, 40 degrees today and been a bit of a heat dome. So this lecture is a little bit of a continuation of another lecture that I gave, some time back. Um, and I still have that hat. This is my news hat. And so when I gave this speech back at the Global Game Jam talk, I said this is kind of like what's going on in the industry, and it was all about labor loot boxes and lies, is what I called it. So today I'm went from L's to F's in terms of the alliteration, but I'm going to keep that thing. If you're interested in seeing the previous talk, I put up a YouTube link there, so anyone that's interested in seeing that. And what I was looking at there was kind of the development of more years of the industry now trying to make your money. So this is a consumer report sort of thing. So I'm going to start off with the idea of free to play. Okay? Everyone know this meme? Fry doesn't look too happy with this one. Okay? So free to play but expensive to do well. So we talked a little bit about flow from that guy with the really long, hard to pronounce, I believe Polish Czechoslovakian name. Yeah. Okay. And we've seen this as a mental state used to explain some of the behaviors within a good game. This idea of if it's too easy, great, you're going to get, bored with it. If it's too hard, you're going to get frustrated. And that there's this kind of beautiful channel right up the middle where I'm just happy, right? This is the thing where if you were to go and start playing a game and you like look at the time and it's gone, that is the state of flow. That's one of the aspects of flow is time delusion, time moving out of this. Um, So today we maybe talked about this as being a means to move to exploitation, but today I want to look at the mechanisms. So we're going to look at how games end up exploiting this state and trying to keep that. And in fact, not only do they exploit this state, but they also purposefully try to knock you out of this state, but then try to save you right at the end. Oh man, I was having such a great time, and then this hard enemy came up. Well, that's funny. I can pay 99 cents to make this thing go away and then I can feel good again, right? Just remember, much like drug dealers, the first one is free. Pay to win mechanics, part of this, part of the things that they do. There's a disassociation between real money and game currency. So a lot of the stuff that you see in these free to play games, they have some other form of gems or some other sort of currency inside of it. So players usually do not actually spend real money on objects and games. They purchase an intermediary currency. So usually there's an earned currency via play as well. And then they spend a special one for these premium objects for real dollars. Normally the in-game currency is never associated with that other currency. These are overexpressive games. So there's lots of bells and whistles, and especially early on in the thing, right? There's the, you're doing so great, you're doing so great, you're doing so great. Oh, you upgraded that thing. A lot of free early on upgrades for uh, mundane actions. This is the creation of a Skinner box. Are we familiar with the work of Skinner? Okay. So Skinner was one of the, we probably may have heard of Pavlov as well. Yeah. Okay. So Pavlov, it was basically anytime that the dog ate food, he would ring a bell, and then he would ring the bell, and the dog's mouth would salivate. Well, Skinner did something very similar with chickens. What he would do is put a box out into the chicken yard, and if the chicken pecked a certain button, out would come some food. And so, what does the chicken learn to do? If I want food, press button, right? So, there's this kind of adaptive response inside of it. There's usually huge initial rewards. So mundane initial actions give you extra rewards at the start of the game. Okay. And so what happens is as you're playing through that early stages of the game, you're always getting a new level. You're always getting a new object. You're always upgrading something. There's always a new thing to do. Man, this game is so great. I've been playing it for 3, 4 hours, and even though there's timers and things like this, I haven't hit any of these requirements. A lot of these games also have timers that can be removed if you just pay a little bit, right? But that early game loop is very quick. So there might be a resource that early on inside of the game, every minute you're able to tap it. And if we go back to the earlier lecture there, right? There was this what are we doing every minute? What are we doing every 5 minutes? What are we doing every 10, every 15, every hour? Well, you only have that early stages of those quick loops. And every time that you're doing that, there's oh, you got an upgrade. Oh, you got an extra thing. Oh, you unlocked some new piece of content. There's more to this game. So we turn to these kind of pair weight mechanics. I want to show you an image here. Okay, this is a pack of foot cards. Okay, can you tell me how much these are? Okay, how much in Canadian dollars? Can anyone tell me? Do you know the currency translation rates between FIFA foot coins to can for FIFA two different ways, right? And in fact, there's a weird translation rate between them too, right? So 300 is equal to 25,000 coins. What's the exchange rate on that? Yeah, we can't do math. There's another reason why they're able to. Uh, I had an old statistics professor who used to say that gambling was a way to tax people that didn't know math. Okay? There's no way to tell this, right? So how much are you spending? You know how much you have in your wallets, and you know how much this thing is. But do you know what the value of that thing is? So there's a difference between how many things is another thing worth, and then there's a difference between that and what value do you place on it. So you can't put it into a language that your brain understands in terms of Canadian currency. This could be $1 million for all we know. It could be 5 cents for all we know for either of these. Okay, so don't show the player what that thing is worth. I'm not paying Canadian currency for this. Pay to win mechanics, part of this push messages, right? If you've got your phone on, how many times does the thing pop up? Your settlers need you, your so and so's need you. Why aren't you coming back? In fact, we're going to give you a daily login reward. 28 days makes a habit. It's that process of going back to that thing again and again and again on it. The other thing is, we said that there's no real sense and understanding of value. Well, that's okay because everything's on sale. Did you notice that's a sale all the time? In fact, you can get a good discount on those foot coins because they're on sale for 50% off right now. Well, what's the thing worth to begin with? So how do you know that it's really 50% off? It's a digital object. It's ones and zeros. What are ones and zeros, electronic ones and zeros worth? So I could make it worth whatever I want to start with and then tell you that something is 50% off. So I could overexpand that price to begin with and then constantly have it on sale. We see these same sorts of tactics when you see like you'll go into Winners, right? Or one of those discount retailers. What does the price tag show you? It says it's this much, but what does it say right under it? valued at, right? Like they're trying to show you what it would retail at some other store for. Okay. So they're always pricing it in some way. And so pricing can be easily differentiable. If you've taken any sort of statistic or economics course, there's this idea of differential pricing. And we do this already. If you get onto a bus in Kamloops, how much is it for a adult? $2. How much is it for a child? Less than, right? If you go to the movie theater, right? What's the price for somebody over 55? Less, right? Senior discount and all these sorts of things. We already do differentiated pricing. So this is one of the ways that the games company can do differentiated pricing. Okay, I've given this person the opportunity multiple times to do this. They don't hit. They're always looking at that page because remember, they know where you are in that game. They have telemetry data. How many times did you click into that buy coins, or how many times did you not hit coins? If I see a player constantly going into that I'm ready to buy phase and then they back out, maybe that's a pricing issue. Every year I cancel Grammarly. I cancel Grammarly. And then when I fill out their thing of why did you leave Grammarly, I go, the price is too high. 2 days later, they send me an email. We're going to give you 50% off Grammarly. So I cancel Grammarly. So the next year, when it comes in, I knock out my credit card, I cancel Grammarly. They say, why are you canceling Grammarly? Your price is too high. Then 2 days later, guess what they sent me this year? Reliably, 50% off Grammarly. Okay. Cancel it, cancel contracts. Really. Like if you want to get right up to the thing, don't threaten to cancel. Cancel. They'll call you back and want because they want your money. Right? They want you to have that extra service, right? I found the same thing with Amazon Prime. Don't pause your Prime. Cancel it. It does the exact same thing, but 3 months down the road, they will send you an email. Would you like half off on Prime? Yes, I would, please. So if you're just going to pause, don't cancel it. Make them come back to you and do that. That's the way to get things actually through this. But again, differential pricing to this, if there's no objective value on what these things are worth, the company doesn't care about giving you that thing for any price. They want your money. That's all. So if they can get from one person $20 and they can get from another person $10, it's not like they have a margin that they have to make up. They're not making pizzas. The costs are already sunk in the development of this game. So 100% profit. They made $20, they made $10, they made money. Exclusives, limited time, seasonality, seasonal events, right? Oh, it's Christmas. We've got this special Christmas pack that gives you the bonus hat for your character that's a Christmas hat. Well, it's weird because there is always something going on, isn't there now? Because holidays, it's now Easter into this, and then we add in holidays from other cultures. Great. So we're gonna have Chinese New Year packs, and we're gonna have all of this. Fortnite. How many different things are there? And it's time limited. If you don't act now, it's gone forever. And you won't be one of the cool people that have this. Difficulty. Initially extremely easy, ramps up and provides extra resources. Difficulty begins to ramp up. That is that flow. And really, what we would want to do is bring you up to that kind of nice peak there. We've got you in for 3, 4 days. Oh, what happens in those timer wait games at about the 3, 4, or 5 day mark? Yeah, isn't it weird that there's like this huge difficulty increase? Timed right to the point where you're checking it every single day and you just got your 1 week of like cool reward thing and you know that. Wow, this game is really kind of becoming not so much fun anymore, right? But you're constantly getting now a push message to come back because and I don't want to lose out on this and I've already put some time into this. This is where we're getting into sunk cost fallacy. So there's all of these worries about, hmm, maybe if I just buy that one little thing just to up me enough into that. Okay. Oh, and look, it's on sale. Okay. So all of this is controlled, and they do analytics in the background of this. I've seen multiple academic papers that have come out on what they call churn prediction, and we'll get into that some more. So, for example, special offer seasonality, right? Look at that. Wow. 5 times the value on the Cashmas Gems bundle. This is Clash of Clans right here, right? The Clashmas Clans bundle. Ooh. But if you just spend a little bit more, you can get the 60 wall ring. You can go up to the 120 wall ring. That's twice as much. So churn. So the percentage of churn is calculated based on the inverse of a retention rate. So the retention rate is how many people are you keeping? The churn is how many people are you losing over a certain period of time. So we could see this as churn equal to the number of lost customers over the number of customers at a period start. Usually developers in game stores look at about a 1, a 7, and a 30-day time period. 1 day, 1 week, 1 month. And that's about where you start to see the interests and the difficulty changes too happening, right? At about the 7 day mark, I'm going to kind of, put the gears a little bit in and see if they'll buy there. And if they don't, maybe we can give them a deal at day 30 to try to pull that. Maybe I now know what that is. Goal is to extract without increasing churn or having a reliable churn. So minimizing that rate or having a steady, consistent low rate. So the longer that you have someone inside of your game, the longer you have them coming back and coming back and coming back, the more likely they are to spend and the more that they will spend. So hence we can't force a player immediately to quit a game. I think we've done this with some games, right? You log into a game, you're like, this is really not for me, shut it down. It's about that 1 week point. Okay, and after that month of being in there, that's the time that they want to hunt the whale. They have a term for this internal to their system known as whales. Whales don't come along too often, but when they do, they want to hunt them. Now, I have had multiple conversations with game developers over the years. In fact, if you watch that previous one of the people who was at one of these Russian games, I think he was part of that Garden Space groups. You've probably seen Gardenscapes and the bad ads for that and all of their systems, which is a really highly thing. Said, "Oh no, that's not what happens. We don't do any of this. Like it's just people like, and I'm like, okay, show me the numbers. Great. You have the analytics. I know you have the analytics. You show me the analytics that back up what you said. Guess what I never received? And I never heard from him about. So in my talk, he was all, going after. I said, show me the numbers and I'll have a discussion and I'll retract anything I'm saying up here if you can show me the numbers that proves what you're saying is true. Those numbers never appeared. Matthew, you probably have seen these numbers. Yeah. What's your thoughts on this so far? Yeah. 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 So, in actual studies on this and looking into who are these whales, it's usually people that have some form of personality that leads them down to that route. So, this would be the neurodivergent or atypical, whatever the proper neurodivergent when I was going through people, or neuroatypical when I was going through. Now they're using, I think, neurodivergent, but basically people who are more susceptible to these types of things. Now, we're all at some point somewhat susceptible. And I think everybody has probably had a game on their thing where they're like, why did I spend so much money on that? Right. So it will trick, but in terms of like people who are willing to put thousands upon thousands of dollars, that is not usually just the Saudi oil sheik guy who, has enough money to like get all of that. And I don't think they're playing these games to begin with, but I don't know. I don't know. Maybe they're very bored, I if I had that amount of money, I don't think I'd be playing a little clicker game on my phone. I would be doing something far different. Maybe I'd be going to casinos. And a lot of these tactics are also the ones that the other gaming industry uses. The other gaming industry does exactly these types of techniques. In a casino, as much money is moving through a casino, there's no such thing as money in a casino. It doesn't exist. You go into a casino, you will never see anyone putting down dollar bills on tables. They'll kick you out. They don't want that dirty money anywhere near their great gaming institution. What do they use? They use chips. They use cards now, right? You plug a card into the thing, not money. This is part of disassociating you with the act of playing a game in their casino, going through the act of gambling, and the association with this is currency that I can spend. Initial offers, clubs. A lot of these places, if you go into them, right, get our dealer's discount card and we'll give you so many chips to go there. We'll pay for your, shuttle from the nursing home to come here and give you like $5 in chips. Okay. All of these types, the high rollers thing, right? Will comp you a hotel. This is all part of that, right? Get you into there, keep you inside of the room. There's no ability inside of these rooms also to have a sense of time. If you look inside of a casino, go around and look and see if you can find a window. Okay, now part of that, especially inside of Canada here, might be that we don't want children to see that gambling exists. But there's lots of cultures where they're more open and it's more out in the open in terms of it. Their casinos still do not have any windows. That's because I don't want my clients to know what time it is. Because if they're in that flow state, I don't want to interrupt it. There's no clocks. Very few clocks inside of casinos on the wall, moving around. There's also lots of light, sound, sensory overload. Okay? Again, it's a party atmosphere, right? All of it is designed in order to put you into this state of bliss, of flow. And so they're doing the same sorts of actions in regards to this. Another group that does this, credit cards. The original credit card companies. This was, again, an act of buying is now not associated with the act of spending. And we see that a lot of university students get into trouble with credit card debt, right? Because I can just put it on my card. Oh, I can just put that on my card. I can just put it on your card. It has a low introductory rate of 0% for 3 months. The actual interest rate was highly, highly problematic. There's initial rewards, right? Hey, if you sign up for this credit card today, you'll get that 0% introductory rate and we'll give you 5,000 points. What is a point? I don't know. You get points for spending. So you're gamifying and going with spending. And you know what they call me at the credit card companies? And I've watched a whole big long Nova documentary of that about this. In fact, one of the people that was in it was a very, very young Elizabeth Warren before when she was still a professor talking about some of the tactics that they use. All of the US credit cards run out of Delaware because there's different laws there. But part of it has to do with the fact of disassociating that spending from it and putting very low interest rates on it and putting people into debt off of this. But they had a terminology there. They were talking with an expert from the credit card industry. I'm what's known as a deadbeat. That's because I pay my bill every month. So their definition of a deadbeat in the credit card industry was the guy that pays his bill every month. because I get all the points, all the rewards, get to use the insurance. I can wait 30 days to make my payment, so I'm doing all of that, and then I pay it off at the end of the month and nothing happens. And I'm a deadbeat because they never get any money out of me. In fact, they spend money to have me on their programs. They don't want people with good credit scores having their cards. They want people also with not so great credit cards or credit scores having their cards because that is the people that they're going to get money off of because they're going to charge you a late fee. They're going to charge you the interest rate off of it. They're going to build that up. And sometimes it doesn't even matter if at the end of the day you go bankrupt and you clear out that debt because you've paid so much in interest over that time period at 29%, and you've been paying that thing off that you've probably paid for it 4 or 5 times over in minimum payments on credit cards. So beware of this. This is really bad debt, these types of things. So I treat them as if they are a charge card, what they used to call a charge card. There's a difference between a credit card and a charge card. Charge card you had to pay off every month. You're just putting it on a charge. Whereas a credit card, you have the line of credit associated with it. There was reports too of some people where they have gone bankrupt and they still have banks, even ones that they, you know, ended up pulling out of sending them offers for more cards in terms of it. In terms of games, some of these systems we see inside of Magic the Gathering. Okay. Rarity levels, cards. Cards sometimes get removed from play in regards to this, and it requires the collection of new boosters packs, highly controlled and regulated. In fact, at one point, Pinkerton detectives were sent to recover some cards that were sold before a hold date. But the early versions of these types of systems and games can be traced all the way back to the Diablo pitch document. Who here's played Diablo, the original one, or Diablo 2, or Diablo 3, one of those? Okay, so you know which game I'm talking about. So at a GDC talk by one of the developers, and still easily accessible by the internet, in my class, I put it on the Moodle, but I can also give it to you guys, is this pitch document. 8 pages in total, including 1 page for the cover, so 6 pages on the game itself, and one is just the timeline of development. There is an entire page that is devoted to nothing but marketing methods. So Blizzard would not originally use this idea. It was not in the original Diablo, but the direction's pretty clear. And that is inside of this, they're saying here we have 2 products. The first, Diablo, which stands on its own, but the other idea of theirs was to get those old 3.5-inch floppies that things came on, and they would put on some various things. They would put maybe an area of terrain, they'd put a certain enemy type, they would put a weapon, and they would put some unlockable thing that when you first put in the disk and you installed these extra files that your character would get right away. What does this sound like? You go, you buy an extra piece of you buy this extra thing that you load into your game from a store. Anyone know what this is? Hmm? Downloadable content before there was downloadable content. This is a loot box. They've described a loot box, and they described it in relation to Magic the Gathering. They said, we already see this system being utilized inside of Magic the Gathering via booster packs that you get these pieces. So looking at what was happening in the marketplace with, man, these kids like going into the game stores and they'll pay a little bit of pocket money in order to get a booster pack of Magic because it's only about, $2, $3 at the time, right? Could we make a disc retailing at the cash register on one of those display racks for this $60 game that costs about $4.99 that would add some additional content? And people would want to collect these just as they collect cards. So way back when, in the early 1990s, they had the initial ideas for how to do loot boxes. And it was not until we had this idea, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little bit too hot with the hat. It's not until we had this idea of downloading from the internet and the infrastructure was there to do this that this was finally put into a game. And it's been put into games by Blizzard as well. So here, what game is that? Overwatch. So we can credit the creation of Diablo and the Diablo pitch document, in my mind, to one of the first descriptions of loot boxes in games that I've been able to find inside of the industry documentation. If someone knows of an earlier version of this, I'd love to see it, especially if there's someone in the industry that can tell me of an earlier version. But this is um, what I think has happened. Now, this, uh, they seem to have some elements of gambling inside of them. And so this is a recent Nature paper out of human behavior where they were cited as being psychologically akin to gambling. So same sorts of systems. And inside of a recent survey back in 2020, Zendel et al. Demonstrated that at the time, half of the top rated mobile games on Android and iPhone and over a third of desktop games contained what they considered in their definition of a loot box. That's how prevalent these things are today. Okay, so I'm going to pause here for a second. Any questions on this? Ideas? Yep. Have they been used inside of non-video games or to make non-pay-to-win games to make them more appealing? Yes. There's certain pieces inside of this where these same sort of psychological techniques and methodologies have been used where you may have what they call more of well, EA was trying to call it surprise mechanics. Uh, they were just loot boxes because they still had payments against them. But there is games that have a loot box-like structure to them, or have some sort of system inside of them that's akin to that, or even that do have microtransactions, but they still kind of try to do it in a bit of an ethical way. Most recent one that I've been playing is Helldivers. Helldivers 2, you can pay money to get super credits, but by playing through the game, the super credit currency is available. So yeah, you're speeding it up. Um, would you want to? I don't think so. But if you wanted to speed up your game loop and unlock a bunch of stuff, then you can. But with that, if you just play a lot in Helldivers and not unreasonably large amount of time comparatively, I know it's like a lot of they have these different like packs that they're releasing that to unlock the whole pack requires the super credits to unlock that phase, and then the medals, which is another in-game currency, unlocks the objects themselves. Uh, but the super credits and the medals, all of them findable in game. To do that though, I think I was pretty much keeping up with every new release within about just playing. I haven't at the last couple of months because I've been just too busy and I haven't been playing Helldivers too. But while it was like out and hot at the start, I pretty much kept up. So I didn't add any extra money to it past the Super Citizen Edition. But and I only bought the Super Citizen Edition because I played it and I was like, no, this is a really good game. I should help these developers, and I saw what the systems were like, so I was willing to do that. Any other questions at this point? Yeah, right. Yeah. No, this was like they were actually put new tiles and new enemy types and add them to their procedural generation inside of it, like add some extra content. So before there was going back to the land before the internet and inside of the 1990s especially, there was these things that were called expansions. And so you would play a game, and then after about, 6 months to a year, this thing called an expansion pack would come out. And it was usually more of that game where maybe some unit types were changed, like StarCraft came out, and then about, I think, a year or two later, it was StarCraft Brood War came out. And it was like almost a completely, taking the same base game, but adding some more content and pieces inside of it. Um, Command and Conquer Generals, and then out came Zero Hour, and you needed the original one in order to download and add that content. Today we call those DLCs. Um, but the difference is that a DLC I can press two buttons and it's down. Back then you had to go to like this weird thing called a store, which is a place that you would go in and they would have games inside of boxes, and then you would have to take that box back to your house and then put like this strange kind of optical disc, okay, into your computer's like a slot on the computer, and then it would transfer that information into the computer. It didn't just come through the air. There was no cloud. Okay, I think I've taken my description a bit too far. But yeah, at this point, that was yeah, yeah. So yeah, and I think it is kind of fundamentally different in terms of what was inside of it. I think was closer to like a small expansion pack is another way to put it, or as in Magic Booster Pack. But the idea of that rarity levels being put on stuff is kind of now what I'm where I'm seeing this kind of early initial loot boxes. This is not a yeah, they showed up and they said that you're going to press a button and then you're going to use so many foot coins in order to get a, player deck or something. But this is where I'm starting to kind of see that the industry is moving in that direction of like small pieces of content available for a additional surcharge. So this is me as an academic going, this is close enough that I can see the original kind of um, formulation. And they never did that in Diablo 2. So Diablo would get an expansion, but it wouldn't get like this whole we can produce more things. But it's the idea that they're starting to have, and the way that they formulate it is very close to a description of a loot box. So no, not a one-to-one, but it's kind of like it. This is to me like the missing link in between the time before loot boxes and into loot boxes. There's it didn't just appear. There was this vestigial missing Cro-Magnon in between. Okay. Does that kind of clarify what I'm getting at? Yeah. Okay. Financing. Okay. You're seeing now with a lot of these games some fun stuff. Have you ever heard of a pump and dump? So the idea of a pump and dump scheme is I'm going to sell you something. But before I sell everyone here and try to convince you to buy something, I'm going to go and buy a lot of it. And it's going to be some cheap thing. And then what I'm going to go around and try to do is get all of you to buy this. It's usually done with stocks, right? Because stocks have necessarily no inherent value. It has to do with what do we put upon the value of that. Now, it's a stock is supposed to represent the value of the company, but if the company is kind of like wishy-washy on what it does and it's a low penny stock, I can say that it's going to do anything in the future, right? So the idea of a pump and dump scheme is I buy a lot of something. Like say I go out and I buy a bunch of GameStop stock, right? Like who's going out and buying, games from that brick and mortar place anymore, right? But I'm going to go and I'm going to buy as much stock as I can in it at a very cheap rate. Now I'm going to go on Reddit and I'm going to create a thing called Diamond Hands. And I'm going to try to convince everyone that they should have Diamond Hands. And in order to have Diamond Hands, you're going to have to buy a lot of GameStop stock. And then all of you are going to go out and go, man, I want to have these diamond hands that he keeps talking about because he's a famous professor and influencer of all of us. So I should really buy that. If Dr. Brown's telling me I should buy that stock, I should probably buy that stock. And so all of you go out and you buy some GameStop stock. Well, the price of it is going to start to go up, right? Because there's more demand for it. Everybody wants this. Everybody wants diamond hands. Professor Brown's this famous influencer, and etc. Then what do? I sell. I sell. And then what do? I run away to Aruba and never see you all ever again because you'll all murder me if you ever see me again. And so this is known as a pump and dump and followed by a rug pull. And we start to see a lot of these types of schemes. Another big one on side of this. Probably heard of a Ponzi or pyramid scheme. Okay, we see this especially inside of marketing, multi-level marketing or MLM scams. Think like Amway and other places. So the idea is to have people recruit their friends into some form of scam, right? So I'm going to come to you and I'm going to say, man, I want you guys, and if you could be in this business with me, and you just have to recruit other people, but in order to start your franchise, you have to give me $100. And then you get your friends to give you $100 to start their franchise, and then you get $20 out of that, and and there you go, and on it goes from there, right? Well, the idea is to have everyone recruit into this. So new people coming into the scam are providing money to all those that were previously in the scam and who have already invested, right? So though you paid in your $100, man, you just got to hustle and then recruit more people to come in, and then you get $20 for every person you recruit. As soon as you recruit 6 people, shoot, you've made a profit, haven't you now? Right? Not to mention all the stuff that you can sell inside of my new multi-level marketing scam that's happening here, right? Sorry, not scam, scheme off of this. You're going to be selling this thing called DLC 3.5-inch floppy of Diablo. Um, who knows? Now, we have a bit of a problem slash opportunity here because this is exponential growth. You just have to recruit more people, and then exponentially, that means exponential money's coming to you, man. Can't you see the beauty of the cash pyramid? The cash pyramid, guys, if only you knew. Well, the problem with this is, say that I said it requires you to recruit 6 people because you're getting $20 out of that. So you're going to make $20 as soon as you recruit 6 people. So you're in the profit after you recruit 6. Well, if this is 2 layers, if I have you recruit 6 people and they recruit 6 people, that's more than the number of professors inside of our department. So our entire department would have to be recruited into the scam in order to survive those first 2 layers. At 4 layers, that's more than the entire faculty of the entire university. Okay, so every department in the university would have to be doing nothing but, convincing people to do this. At 6 layers, that's everybody at the university is part of this, is a member of this group. At 7 layers, that's more than the entire population of the city. And at 13 layers, that's more than the number of people on Earth. Okay? Now, how gullible are your friends? Pretty gullible, right? Okay? But are you also going to probably have some of the same friends as him? The gullible ones, maybe at least, right? Okay. So we can see that this is really optimistic because people also have to find new people to recruit. And I don't think you know the guy in Zambezi. Like there's issues of like how do you recruit people internationally into this and all sorts of problems to get to the entire population of Earth to begin with. But these have been moving around. And in fact, there's one that exists on Instagram right now, these online games, which they call the blessing loom. And so the idea here is you've got somebody in the middle, and as you add people into this loom by paying in $100, then the person in the middle finally gets $800. Wow, there's your blessing from everybody in the group. We hand you money. Then you got to recruit another 8 suckers, people, blessing people to come into it, right? Because giving's better than receiving in terms of this, and you got to go out and do this. And so you see these on Instagram all over the place. There's YouTube videos on how to run your own and all these sorts of things, right? And all these people talking about it in these mystical manners. Well, this is kind of interesting because this is actually just a two-dimensional representation of a pyramid. You're just seeing it from on top. This is the guy at the top of the pyramid. This is everybody one layer down. So I could draw this as we saw earlier. We learned about trees. I could draw that as a tree. Guess what the shape of a tree is? If you look at it this way, it is rather triangular, right? Illuminati confirmed. It's a pyramid scheme. And we can see here that this is a closed system. Where is new money ever generated? By finding 8 more suckers. There's these things called non-fungible tokens. And the idea is you can, using a blockchain, you can encode a game object, was originally some of the ideas of this, with a UID that's cryptographically secured to that item. It was also being done in order for digital artists to somehow protect their work and have something that was exchangeable for some form of value to help them out. So a lot of good ideas for this were available there for looter shooters. So I play Diablo and I get the, axe of undying freedom or something, right? And it has a plus, 7 attack against fascist orcs. I don't know, making stuff up. And so with that, you get this item, you want to have that item because maybe you can trade that off in the game store to somebody else. The idea was, could you own the game item? And so there's ideas with that. This has become a method for pump and dump rag dolls, polls, Ponzi schemes, and through it. All of these. In completely unrelated news, CoffeeZilla and Logan Paul are right now in a lawsuit over a game. I am making no allegations that this is actually just a giant pump and dump and Ponzi scheme. Legally, I am required to say that. In my opinion, this might be a weird thing that we should look into. In my opinion, there are allegations that this is a game that might be one of these types of scams, in my opinion, and allegedly. So, a game inside of this where you breed creatures hatched from eggs to get coins. And so then those could be used to buy other things inside the game, buy more eggs. And early investors can earn based on the existing animals that are producing these coins, which they can sell eggs from, and later investors' money can be used to buy resources created from the early investors. That's part of the game description. Allegedly. But before any of this happened, the whole thing also fell apart because somebody was hired that didn't know what they were doing, and CoffeeZilla has a much larger video on this with some more alleged actions. Allegedly, in my opinion. Okay, we'll stop there for a second. Any questions on any of this? Nope, nothing? Okay. I feel like I'm missing something here. Give me one sec. Oh, it's later. I messed up with my placement. Okay. Falsehoods. So this is the ZX Spectrum Vega Plus. It was designed as part of a regeneration of an old system from Sinclair Computers. And so based off of an old retro computer from Sinclair Research Limited. And the idea was to produce a crowd-funded launch of this handheld, and they did it through Indiegogo. And this was by a gentleman known as David Levy, and he was tasked by the Clive Sinclair of Sinclair Computers to work with Chris Smith as a technical officer who'd written a book on the subject of retro computers. The two of them were going to get together, they were going to crowdfund, and then they were going to release this old retro computer as a handheld. So you could play all of these old games from your favorites if you lived in England at the time of the old ZX period. Well, after a extremely long period of time, this never appeared. This machine never appeared. And in fact, the directors allegedly stole that money. Allegedly, in my opinion. Okay. David Levy is a rather weird guy, too. I've had my own dealings with him on a sidle thing. I'll get into that. After this, he would go on to write a book about sex robots. Okay, that could be interesting. I mean, I don't know. And he would use the money from this scheme, allegedly, to fund, sorry, not fun, uh, an erotic chatbots company, which again was struck from the UK company house roster in 2017. So this means that it either went bankrupt or they didn't put in a required reporting form to company house. So the business was basically had its license revoked. I'm just going to leave that one up there. And this was also, and this is the way that I got into learning about this gentleman, and I use that term extremely loosely. He'd be part of what there was this one conference known as ACE, and there was a campaign that I was part of in which I think I actually created this hashtag at some point by saying, "Hey, maybe we should boycott this thing." Um, and this other person, who I will not pleasure by saying his name, uh, in which they basically killed a formerly major computing conference through some craziness. The entire committee quit as an act of protest over some people having to do with like the peer review process in regards to this. They conjoined it with a robotics sex forum, probably having to do with those things above. Uh, they were going to have Steve Bannon speak at this about the future of robots doing sex acts. I don't know, Steve Bannon, well known for his work with the Trump campaigns, and now actually, what did he get? He said he was hit with a misdemeanor or a felony for not testifying before Congress or something. Like he's in jail presently, is my understanding, or going to it. They posted pictures of the Unabomber because the conference was inside of Montana and they had basically famous Montanans at the top, which included the Unabomber. And if you don't know who the Unabomber is, Ted Kaczynski sent basically mail bombs to people, primarily to universities and to airlines. Hence the Una in Unabomber, as in bombs universities. In fact, the professors that he was sending those bombs to were computer science professors because he believed that robots were taking over the world. So, in other words, in order to have their games conference promoted, they put an image of a gentleman, and again, I use that term very loosely, known as the Unabomber, who sent package bombs to university professors, and in one case, killed a secretary at one of these universities. Yeah. But through all of this, and with all of us going, hey, what is going on with this weird conference and what is happening? And all of us posting on Twitter and going, this is really weird and talking about it. we were declared to be Nazi Antifa members, including yours truly. And multiple personal Twitter attacks came at us, mostly via a bot network. And there was even a website. I don't know if it still exists, but if you got some interesting, look for Joseph Brown is exposed. Put that in a search bar, and it's a whole website about like the most rambling bullshit that you ever. Sorry, I should be careful. I'm on stream. The most rambling stuff that you ever did see about, me hating these people. This is why I don't say their names. Don't want to invoke the beast. I think he actually at one point he has now been given the Order of Australia. So I want to know what's going on with Australia because he joined this really weird far right political thing inside of like their equivalent of basically like some form of, you know, Australia first. Yeah. And then they didn't provide refunds when the conference finally did fold because so many people wanted to withdraw their papers because they started learning about like the crazy things that were happening. At one point, someone is on his mailing list and they received an email about how he's now creating space lasers to defend Ukraine. He also works at this very weird fake university in Tokyo. So there you go. But yeah, that's who David Levy hangs around with and what they're up to. So huzzah. If you're interested in more about the whole Spectrum VX scandal, what happened there with the Indiegogo and all of that, there's a YouTube in regards to that. So yeah, being a games professor is fun because you get to deal with all sorts of really interesting people. That was probably the most interesting thing that I've had to deal with in a very long time. Okay, on to the next one. This is Billy Mitchell. Billy Mitchell, okay? Billy Mitchell is a well-known giant floating head that appeared on the regular show. Okay? They called him Garrett Bobby Ferguson, but this is an entirely accurate image of a person that I know to be Billy Mitchell. So anytime that I say from now on Billy Mitchell, I mean this character right here from the regular show. Okay? I just want to make sure that there's no confusion. This is Billy Mitchell to me. Whatever I say, when I say Billy Mitchell, I mean this. Okay? And if I use Billy or Mr. Mitchell or whatever I want to use, that's only who I'm talking about. In totally unrelated news, Carl Jobs is being sued. He is well known mostly for his speed runs through GoldenEye. He has some of the world records in terms of this, and so he's frequents a lot of these types of world record sites. And he talks about various things that happen inside of the uh, inside of the industry and that. And so he made some videos about other people that were, having to deal with gaming records, like that guy from the regular show, Billy Mitchell, is a guy that in that show is well known for having various gaming records. Well, the person that's suing Carl Jobst in a completely unrelated issue wants $45,000 for defamation over claims that Carl Jobst has made about Pac-Man scores and whether they were real or not. I think it was It was either No, it was sorry, it was King Kong, wasn't it? Okay, good. It was Pac-Man. For the purposes of this argument, it was Pac-Man. Billy Mitchell scored very high in Pac-Man and is now suing Carl Jobst in the regular show. Okay, so this is finally going to be going to trial. And that same person actually sued the Cartoon Network over his likeness being used inside of the regular show, one in which he lost as he was not a big, giant floating head. So the person that's suing Carl Jobst is not the big, giant floating head who I know as Billy Mitchell. This person, who will remain unnamed, Also sued Twin Galaxies, where he had scores on there, to replace their scores in Pac-Man. Sorry, what was it? Donkey Kong. I'm getting things confused because it was, yeah. Sorry, I'm getting him confused with the big giant floating head Billy Mitchell. Okay, so that is the story of this completely unrelated issue to Billy Mitchell, the big giant floating head. Okay? If you're interested in more on that, Carl Jobst's got lots of YouTube videos. Just put in Carl Jobst and that, and strangely enough, put in Billy Mitchell, the big giant floating head from the regular show. Okay. So with all of this happening inside of the games industry, what is my advice? What should we do? What should we do? It seems like everywhere I go, it's scammers and weird sex robot people and all sorts of stuff going on today. And I mean, even Matthew yesterday, how many times did he say, and this book created by this person who then went absolutely nuts. And yeah, there is a lot of like separating the artist from the art and things and arguments of that, but also there's just crazy stuff going on. Well, we have a lot of power as consumers. We're the ones who Adam Smith calls the invisible hand of the market. There's no such thing. We are implementing it. What we consume will lead more or less to what things are produced over time. So boycotts, word of mouth, targeted support, deplatforming, platforming people, advocacy, toolkits. These are effective ways to move the industry in directions that we want to support. I see this especially from the position of accessibility. There's a lot of advocacy about accessibility in games and putting that inside of it. And I think that's a great thing. There's a lot more advocacy about representation inside of games. I think that's a great thing. We need more games in general that more people play to keep this being a very healthy and vibrant industry that which we work. So if there's anything with this, I would say be a somebody. And what I mean by that is there's lots of things that happen inside of the world in which we say somebody should do something. I'm a somebody. I want to do things that are going to move this in the right direction. So be a somebody if you can. If you see something going on where you go, wow, somebody really should do something, great. Guess what? You're a somebody. Okay. So somebody should do something about this problem. Great. That's now your problem too. Okay. Get involved with this sort of stuff. Platform those people, work with those people, go to those places, help out each other in regards to this. If we see things that we don't like inside of the industry, tell people, I don't like that. I don't like games that do these things. I don't like games that make these actions. We've seen that this can succeed. Helldivers unite to push on Sony. Okay, so Helldivers, I brought this up as being one that there I see a lot of good inside of what they're trying to do and what their methodology is. They still have things that are microtransactionist, but they're not required. Um, there's been a lot of arguments, for example, of like, oh, cosmetic DLC is where we can put these types of things. But then there's also still people where I need every single costume, I need every single piece of this thing in order to feel fulfilled. There is those neuroatypical people that want to have that, or there's that fear of missing out. And so putting systems in place that don't have those restricted things. But Helldivers Unite to push on Sony. Here, Sony was originally going to require everyone that played Helldivers in order to log into a Sony account. Now I have a PlayStation, I already had a Sony account. I could care less either way, right? It was just linking it up and it made sense. But I was playing it on the PC. Why do I need a Sony account in order to play a game that's on my personal computer? That's what a lot of people thought. Well, Helldivers got review bombed because of this. And in fact, one of the media managers at Arrowhead was fired over some of his statements where he basically said, well, it's not us, it's Sony. Do whatever you want to do. And yeah, that was that. But Arrowhead received massive negative scores in regards to this. In fact, Sony pulled back on that. They're now trying to put it into, I forget what game that they're going after now. There's another one that's coming out where they want to. Anyways, but that was a great example of where consumer support and consumer advocacy moved to a position where some people were saying, I will not support this game or I'm uninstalling it. I'm not going to go through with this. And Helldivers 2 at that time was in a very hot position. It was one of the most sold games on it. Okay. Anyone hear about this story? Domina? Okay. So this is kind of more from an indie sort of game. This was really interesting. There was crazy patch notes where it was all sexist anti-masker, anti-COVID policy theory rants in patch notes. Again, huge consumer backlash. They brought this forward and it was removed from Steam over these developer comments in patch notes. So political, statements. And I mean, this was not like, Trump is probably the president that I should vote for. It wasn't to that level. It was to like, calling people out and ad hominem attacks in patch notes and things like that removed off of it. Okay. Um, we saw an issue there with like, for example, Indiegogos. Well, Kickstarters, peer-to-peer funding models. I love supporting smaller creators. I love Kickstarter. I think it's a great methodology for funding developments, especially board games and things like that. Um, and I've had lots of great experiences with Kickstarter campaigns, and I've had a few bad experiences with Kickstarter campaigns where that thing was not delivered or did they didn't meet with what they were aiming to do. So a few tips here. Check the history of those that you're dealing with. Are they people that create a lot of ideas and have unsuccessful Kickstarters in the past? Because lots of people can say, I'm going to build a game. We've seen that even this week. Is their model achievable? So a lot of them will have some form of system of here's what's happening here and what are they demonstrating in terms of their timeline. Do they not only talk about the game? I see this a lot too, right? Like, I want to make a game that does this thing. I want to make a game that has this. I want to make a game that has this. I want to make a thing that has this. What's the business model? Do they have a publishing plan? How are they going to ensure that they get the thing out to you? Do they have a shipping model, a shipping plan? Do they have a timeline? Does it include marketing costs? If it's just, I'm going to make a game that has all these features, and here's a list of features which the game will include, and there's no business plan in association with that, mm, that to me is a bit of a red flag. Yeah. What, what happened there? Yeah. Yeah. Whereas I'd be trying to see more of like, oh, we just finished this piece of the development, or we just finished this piece of the development. Yeah. So think about it from your own experiences in terms of developments, right? Where are you expecting to see? What reports would you be expecting to see out of yourself if you're building a game, right? Shoot, I would even say that you don't even want a Kickstarter online until you at least have a minimal viable product and maybe have an artist signed on. If the team doesn't have an artist signed on, right? Can they tell you who that artist is? If in their plan it says find an artist, I'm gonna like, and if we look at, for example, big example, this is Mighty Number Nine, right? The kind of uh, platforming, shoot, what's the robot game? Mega Man sort of game, right? So it's basically kind of a Mega Man clone. problem with that game was not necessarily that the game itself was bad. They did finally do produce a game and put it out, but it didn't meet with what they had promised and what they had said was going to happen and the timelines that they had done with. And that's why at the end of the day, people were just like, oh, it's just another game. Okay. Don't put in money that you expect to ever see again. Okay. I see a lot of people sometimes they're like, oh, I'm getting this Kickstarter and it's supposed to come out here and I'll give it to my friend for their birthday or something. It's like, no, that's not what Kickstarter is for. Okay. Kickstarter, see this as like you're a venture capital investor, right? So you're going to put this capital in and you're an early adopter, an early investor in regards to this. You will have losses. So don't put into that anything you can't afford to not have. So if we look at, for example, that ZX Spectrum thing, right? That was a quite significant investment for a lot of these people, and they had someone who had that experience and maybe put some things inside of that. It still didn't release. And in fact, sometimes it's those people with those really huge, giant names that are the ones where you see the most non-recoverable things because how engaged are they in the project and inside of that? Beware hidden costs. Okay. So if you get the super deluxe giant mega pack and they're shipping it from wherever and they're putting it up on there and they say, oh, well, it's this much for the super deluxe mega pack, shipping not included. How much is it going to cost to ship the super deluxe mega pack board game? Because maybe a year on from now, you'll just see this thing saying, hey, it's backer kit, give us another $100, right? So your $100 game is now a $200 game. Okay. Customs is another big one with Canada, especially. I don't know what happened to free trade. I keep on being told that there we have free trade, but then my, shirts from the US showed up and I'm having to pay customs duties on t-shirts. So I don't know. So that would be some of the tips in order to kind of prevent issues with that. And conversely, if you're developing and you're doing Kickstarters, look at this from the other direction. What do you have to tell the people that are going to finance you? Where do you have to be before you can get that first financing? How are they going to know that you're someone that's trustworthy to put their money with? Do you have a history of not creating ideas all the way? Is your model unachievable? Are you talking only about the game? Are you not giving your backers a publishing plan and delivery timeline? Okay, are you asking them to put more in than they have? Big thing with creators, right? Like, oh, well, for this much, we'll fly you to see the development, etc. And who's buying that? Is it a whale? And are you preying upon some poor guy that's just trying to get a video game and wants to meet a real life video game developer or something? How much of your artistic vision are you removing by the fact that, you're giving to a player the ability to put their name or likeness into your game, right? What if they want to put something that's out of bounds in terms of the name or, that? Okay. We need to do more of the good stuff and less of the bad stuff. This gets back even to my earlier point of what should we be doing? And we're somebody. Don't pirate, guys. Okay? There's lots of games out there, right? There's lots of people pirating games, I know, but especially from small creators, right? If you guys are going to be small creators, do you want people pirating your games? Now, some developers actually believe that piracy is great, right? Gabe Newell said piracy is a platform problem, not a price problem, not a, but there's some people where if they can get it for free, they will. Okay, fair enough. Maybe that's a sale that you never would have got to begin with. But if we're going to support this industry, if we're part of the problem, then we're going to have some issues there. Buy from the source as much as possible. I see a lot of these things where they'll put their game up on Steam, they'll put their book up on Amazon, they'll put their object into some aggregate place where everybody can get a copy from it and do advertising. But here's the thing, Steam takes a cut. Check with the developer website. Sometimes they'll sell those objects through their own website, and you can still upload them into Steam or get a Steam key from them, but then it puts more of the money in their pocket and not in the platform's pocket. So as much as you can go directly to the source and do those purchases, do that. Okay? Buy fresh local games from developers when you can. Support the industry, right? So if you're looking for a game and you're going to spend, $60 on that, is there three indie games that would give you just as many hours of fun and play as that $60 game that you're willing to purchase? Who are working in the industry and are doing that. Don't buy games that have practices that you don't like. Loot boxes, free to play stuff. Don't go down that route. If you don't like those practices, if you believe those practices should be gone from the industry, don't support them. Tell developers that I won't buy that game because it has that practice. Because they are monitoring what the telemetry is. Okay? Speak up in regards to this. The review bombing thing for Sony and everything, it worked because people spoke up and said, I do not want this practice to engage inside of this. But don't just speak up, but also act with your money. Take it and walk it somewhere else. Okay? Let them know that they lost a sale because this practice exists, and I bought this other thing that doesn't have that practice. If you're going to engage of these types of things, put limits on your spending, especially if you are neuroatypical or prone to this, and be accountable. If anything, have an accountability partner and someone that holds your credit card for those types of things, right? Set limits, stick within it. We hear that all the time with it, but these types of games are very akin to problem gambling addiction. It's along the same sort of lines. It's touching the same pieces inside of your brain. Okay. So for Angelo, if he's watching there, get an accountability partner. I always like picking on Angelo because okay, I'll give you an example of one that I've seen that kind of does this and is to me is kind of one of these nicotine patches for it. This is Luck Be a Landlord. It's a little small game on Steam, costs about $13 Canadian right now. And it contains basically gambling mechanic with surprises, loot boxy sort of things, all of those, but it has absolutely no microtransactions inside of it. You're basically spinning. The whole idea of this is there's you are in an apartment complex in which there is a one-armed bandit inside of it, and you have to pay your landlord rent every week. So you get 7 spins, and you have to make the money back. Okay? So it has all of the bells, all of the whistles, a lot of those types of things that you would normally see inside of a normal slot machine, but it's wrapped up inside of this and costs $13. Period. Okay? I won't say who I got this for, but I got it for someone in order to ensure that, $13 stayed $13. Okay? There, this is one of the ways that I kept someone accountable is by having that. Because it is targeting the same things in the brain. Okay. Now, if I can say anything to kind of end this whole review of some of the practices inside of the industry, some of the weird stuff that's going on in the industry, and to kind of move this from 2019 now to 2024, buyer beware. At the end of the day, people and companies and these businesses, they're running a business. Game developers are running a business. They are trying to extract value, trying to extract money at the end of the day. So they're providing the value of product in exchange for the value of the money. And the good is worth what people believe that it is worth. So beware of these types of tactics, techniques, methodologies in order to separate you from that hard-earned money. Because money is getting harder to earn. It's getting more expensive or harder to earn, however you want to view that image of it. And so, are these things worth your time, worth your value, worth it in order to have that dopamine hit of feeling good for a few moments? And if they're not, you don't want to see this in the industry. Well, as much as I don't want to see this type of actions inside the industry, I would rather that we spend our time making great games that people want to play. And the way that you get the next customer is because they go, wow, this is a really fun game, and tell the next person, and then they buy it too. That I think is a better model for all of us. I think it's a healthier model. I think it's a more ethical model. And I think in the end of the day, that's where we're going to see real value, not from digital sheet. So that's my prepared remarks, but I will open it up to the crowd if there's any questions. Too long of a week? Okay. I don't know. Any comments on the online? Let's see here. I can just see the dejected look on all of your faces in regards to what's happening in the industry right now. So, okay. So if there's no questions, oh, hi, Gavin. Yeah. If there's no questions, then I'd like to thank you all for coming out this week. I'd like to thank you all for attending. Um, and we're going to start back up again on Wednesday morning of next week, and I hope to see you all out here for that. We're going to again still have more food every day. We are going to have in, especially next week, more industry focused people. We're going to have in some game developers coming in from Vancouver. We're going to have an online talk from industry veterans. So if this was academia week, next week is industry week. And also, I'm going to be showing a little bit about how to create procedurally generated camouflage. We're going to use a little bit of some of the stuff there with Perlin noise and with cellular automata. So thank you all for attending this week. And thank you all on stream if you've been watching this week in these videos. And I will see you all next week.